Gregory Green went to prison in 1991 after killing his pregnant wife. He was released after serving just 16 years and went on to marry the daughter of Pastor Fred Harris, an old friend of Green's who had lobbied for his release. 25 years after committing his first crime, Gregory Green attacked his second wife and 4 children. This is that story. Welcome to 10-Minute Murder, brief and bingeable true crime. I'm Joe, I'm the host. Thank you for joining today. And you're joining me in a hotel room still again. This should be the last episode, by the way. The last episode, not of the podcast, the last episode from the hotel room. My work here is done, so to speak. I was prepared to stay longer, but what we came to do, it has happened, so that means it's time for me to go home. But not before I need to do this episode. Is my air conditioner still set on 65? Absolutely. Are people waiting until they get right outside of my door to tell the punchline of their jokes? Apparently. So it still sounds like chaos outside of my hotel room. But on the positives, the Florida weather is fantastic right now. Can't complain about that. I had blueberry pancakes for lunch today, so that was good. And I'm currently wearing a souvenir hat that I bought in a souvenir shop that I thought that looks like a pretty good hat that I can cut grass in. I put it on and I haven't taken it off since. Before we get going with the episode today, this is your official reminder to subscribe wherever you happen to be listening right now. If this is your first time listening, I appreciate you checking it out. I hope you enjoy it and stick around for more episodes. There are more than 250 episodes to go back and listen to. So you can do that at your leisure when you subscribe. And it's absolutely free. Also connect with 10-Minute Murder on social media. All the links are in the show notes of this episode, or you can go to 10minutemurder.com. Now, let's get to the story. Gregory Green grew up and lived in Detroit, Michigan. He met and married LaTanya Clayton, who went by Tanya, in July of 1989. Tanya had a daughter from a previous relationship, and she and Green also looked after another daughter. And it's not clear whether this child was Green's biological child. A close friend who knew Tanya since middle school described her as fun-loving, kind, and had a big heart. In July of 1991, Tanya was 6 months pregnant with Green's child. Shockingly, this did not stop him from what he did next. On July 14th, Gregory Green picked up a steak knife and viciously attacked Tanya. The 2 children who I previously mentioned were in the home, but they were not physically harmed. Green stabbed Tanya 10 times, puncturing both of her lungs in the attack, before he called 911. When officers arrived, Gregory Green told them, "I stabbed her, she's in the kitchen," and he also let them know that the knife was on the refrigerator. When it came time for trial, Gregory tried to use an insanity defense, but that didn't work, and he ended up pleading no contest to second-degree murder. He got a pretty light sentence of 15 to 25 years in prison and ended up being paroled in 2008 after serving 16 of those years. Green's mother, Tommy Lee, wrote to the judge back in 1992 and asked for leniency for her son. She didn't feel as if he was a threat to society. Those were her exact words, and thought that a long sentence would not help him become a better man. It turned out that Tommy Lee was very much wrong on that point. She, by the way, passed away at 87 years old in September of 2012, never learning of what her son had gone on to do. Green was denied parole 4 times before being allowed out in 2008. Pastor Fred Harris helped this process by writing letters in 2005 and 2006 advocating for Green's release. They used to be friends back before his first murder, and Pastor Harris was confident that Green had changed and stated that he would have the support of the church once he was out. In the first letter, Pastor Harris even described Green's first crime as a mishap. And that's certainly not the word that I would use to describe what happened, but it seemed Pastor Harris really thought that Green would never do something like that again. He believed that so much that he gave his blessing for Green to marry his own daughter, Faith, on December 18, 2010. Faith had met Green at her father's church. They knew each other from their younger years, but Faith said she never knew why Green had gone to prison. He didn't want to talk about it, which maybe should have been a bit of a red flag. Some of Green's relatives claimed that Faith did know about the murder of his first wife, not that it matters much now. Faith had 2 children, Chadney Jr. and Kara, from a previous relationship, and had 2 more with Green, Coy and Kaylee, in 2011 and 2012. Even though she had young children with him, Faith was unhappy enough in the marriage to apply for divorce in October of 2013. She later said that Green had a major shift in his personality after their first daughter was born. He became angry and, at times, abusive. Around this time, Faith also applied for a personal protection order against her husband. She described him as being belligerent and kicking objects around the home. One of those objects being the couch while their baby was asleep on it. He also threatened her, telling her once to get out of the house, quote, "or else things are going to get ugly." Faith's protection order wasn't granted, and the couple did not end up going through with their divorce. They lasted another 3 years, but in August of 2016, Faith again started the divorce process. A month later, Green did something unimaginable. Following the pattern from his 1991 attack, Green called 911 shortly after 1 a.m. on September 21st, 2016. He then stood outside of his home in Dearborn Heights and waited for them to arrive so that he could be arrested. And I doubt those officers could have even imagined what they would find behind that door. Faith was in the basement, bound with tape and zip ties. Gregory Green had used a box cutter to slash her face and then shot her in the foot. As horrific as it sounds, it was far from the worst of it. Green made Faith watch him shoot her 2 older children execution style. Chadney was 19 years old and Kara was 17 years old. As for the 2 younger girls, who were just 4 and 5, Green had placed them in his car that he rigged to fill with carbon monoxide. Once they had died from the poisoning, he took them back upstairs and put them in bed. Green was taken to jail while investigators put all of the puzzle pieces together. Luckily, Faith had survived, so what happened in the house became very clear. It turned out that Green had been planning the murders for at least a week and had bought the piping he needed to rig the car a week earlier at Home Depot. A district judge ordered that Green undergo a psychological assessment to see that he was fit to stand trial. This did slow down the proceedings for a few weeks, but Green was found competent. Thankfully for the family members, this case did not end up going to trial. If it had, they would have had to sit through all of the morbid details all over again. In February of 2017, he pleaded guilty to 4 counts of second-degree murder and torture. Green also pleaded guilty to assault with intent to do great bodily harm and a felony firearm charge for what he had done to Faith. There had been other charges on the table like unlawful imprisonment, felon in possession of a firearm, and felonious assault, but these were dropped as a part of a plea deal. This time around, Green did not get away with a light sentence. He was given 47 to 102 years in prison, with his earliest possible parole coming when he is 97 years old. It is effectively a life sentence. Wayne County Court Judge Dana Hathaway oversaw the case and called it, by far, the worst she'd seen in her career. She explained that she was reluctant to follow the sentencing agreement, but knew avoiding a trial was important for the family. If it was up to her, Green would not have been eligible for parole. Faith was able to address Green during the sentencing, where she called him a con artist, a monster, and a devil in disguise. After the attack, Faith was left with short-term memory loss of the night, post-traumatic stress disorder, nightmares, and migraines. She suffered many parents' worst nightmare, which I can't help but feel was Green's plan all along. He didn't want her to die because then she wouldn't have been in as much pain. He wanted her to live through what happened to her children. By keeping her alive, he made sure that she would suffer. Over 1,000 people attended the farewell of Faith's 4 children, held at the Detroit First Church of Nazarene. Chadney Allen Sr. was present to say goodbye to his son and daughter, Chadney Jr. and Kara. His son had aspirations of getting into journalism and being a producer. His daughter Kara was described as a beautiful honor roll student. Gregory Green took everything away from them and snatched their lives away before they had really even begun. He is a true monster in every sense of the word.